Welcome to the Microbiome Report powered by Biome Health. I am your host, Andrea Ween, and we are talking all about herbs today with two of our favorite guests, Megan Telpner and Josh Gitalis. They've both been on the show separately, but this is the first time that we've had them together in the same room to really put their brain power into a single episode, and I couldn't be more thrilled with how it turned out. We are talking about how to use herbs in your everyday life. So these are things like teas, tinctures, salves, lotions, really the list goes on and on. And what's so cool is Josh and Megan have distilled all of their information into a course called Everyday Herbal. So on this episode, I really picked their brain into what herbal medicine is, how we can use it in our modern day life, how it's different from pharmaceuticals or even supplements that we might be taking, and some common herbs that we can use for digestive ailments, things like constipation, diarrhea, upset stomach, indigestion, GERD. These really common things that are out there that herbs can have a huge impact on. We also talk about some contraindications, things to watch out for, and then also how to start using herbs with kids. So this episode is packed with information, and I'm really so excited to bring it to you. I just love the way that Josh and Megan are able to explain things and make it really easy and accessible to understand. Many of you will know that I've taken courses with Josh and Megan before, and I just really can't sing their praises enough. So please go to biomehealth.com/pages/podcast to get all of the links to their course and everything that we talked about in this episode. Additionally, don't forget that if you go to Biome's website, you can save 15% off with the code POD15. So that's POD15. Now, without further ado, let's get to the show. Megan and Josh, welcome to the show. It's so lovely to have you both together.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're sitting very close together right now to do this too, which is always nice.
Yes, that is nice. I know. Sometimes when you're married, you're suddenly like, oh, wait, we're this close together. Great.
Yeah.
You forget to do that sometimes. So most people probably think of herbal medicine as a little bit of an antiquated form of medicine. Can we talk about just a brief history of how herbs have been used medicinally and then how it's evolved really for modern day?
Absolutely. Well, I think herbal medicine has evolved because indigenous tribes and people around the world have looked for some sort of medicine in their environment. They knew that food would keep them alive and give them sustenance, and they knew that food was important for their health. But when there was, injuries or cuts or illnesses, they would look to nature to find remedies for that too, because they knew that food did that in terms of sustaining their health. So different herbal disciplines have been developed all over the world using herbs for very actually similar ailments and similar mechanisms. Like we find that one herb in one part of the world has similar mechanisms than herbs in other parts of the world. And it's just really cool because nature provides no matter where you are. So, like ginger and turmeric and boswellia, they all are really great anti-inflammatories, but available in different parts no matter where you are.
One of the things that we love in learning about herbal medicine and using it in our everyday lives, both culinary wise and in therapeutic ways, is that now in 2021, living in Toronto, there is so much knowledge available to us and so much access to what has been used for thousands and thousands of years in other cultures. And so we have the privilege of being able to sort of pick and choose the very, very best for what our specific needs are. I mean, viruses and pathogenic bacteria, and these have been in existence and a threat to humans for as long as humans have been on the planet. And for the longest time, herbal remedies and other types of natural remedies were used to sustain health and maintain health and regain health when needed.
This question actually reminds me of a little story. I was on an herbal farm for about a couple months doing an herbal medicine internship.
Right after Josh and I started dating, he took off for 6 weeks. It was a cute move.
Well, he came to Ohio, which is where I am, so I can't fault him too much. Yeah.
Yeah, Ohio is a rich, rich source of amazing herbs, which is why actually one of the teachers of the program decided to set up shop there, I guess about 50 years ago now. And he decided that he wanted to live off the land, completely be self-sufficient. So he learned how to farm. And after he learned how to farm and make all of his food, he decided he needed some sort of sweetness and became a beekeeper for that. But then he realized he also needed medicine for various ailments because he wanted to be completely, self-sufficient and not depend on the conventional medicine world. So he became an herbalist. So we could, that's kind of the evolution of humankind as well, is that we've sought these remedies to keep us healthy and to deal with situations as they come up if they're, acute medical situations.
But not emergency medical situations.
Right. That's a good thing to specify. Conventional medicine is incredible for stabilizing and for emergencies. And we should definitely go to a doctor or hospital if, we're something life-threatening. But we're talking about, maintenance of health and, little things.
Day-to-day prevention.
I think you, Megan, mentioned also that there's culinary uses and therapeutic uses for herbs. And I'd love to just talk about that distinction a little bit and what the difference is between an herb that we might be using culinarily and what that looks like and what a therapeutic use would be.
Yeah. So a great example, Josh mentioned turmeric. So turmeric we can use in our cooking. We use it in things like curries. We can use it in teas. We can use it as a flavoring agent. We can use it, sprinkling it on a dry rub on chicken or on tempeh. So there's so many different ways to use turmeric as a culinary application for both its flavor and its nutritional benefit. The active component in turmeric is curcumin. It's one of them, which is a very concentrated and powerful anti-inflammatory, said to be as effective as non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. You're not going to get that level of anti-inflammatory benefit by sprinkling a teaspoon into a pot of curry. However, if you were to take it in a therapeutic dose, say as a supplement, a concentrate of the curcumin, or as a tincture, then you start getting that higher therapeutic benefit. We also use turmeric in a poultice. So if, Josh mentioned emergency medicine, if you break your leg, you want to go to the emergency room. However, if you have a slight sprain or you've, pulled a muscle working out, you can make a poultice with turmeric and some ginger and castor oil and put that as a compress on your body and be able to gain benefit from those anti-inflammatory properties in those spices. So that's an example of how something can be used both in a culinary application, in an internal therapeutic application, and in an external therapeutic application.
Even another example, something I just dealt with recently with one of my clients is Megan and I are sitting right now in our kitchen looking at our spice rack.
Yeah, we're both looking at the jars of spices that we keep out.
So over on the shelf there, I see clove. And clove is, again, a spice we use in a lot of our cooking and recipes. And recently I had a client who had a toothache and couldn't see a dentist right away, couldn't get help for that. So clove oil is an amazing anti-inflammatory and local analgesic. So that's even another form, these essential oils, which harness a lot of the medicinal qualities out of this spice.
Clove also happens to be a really potent antioxidant. Contain potent antioxidants. So we often think of like blueberries, or everyone loves to think about wine, but clove also has that benefit, and it's antiviral, antimicrobial, antibacterial, as many spices are. So what's really amazing about using herbs in this way is that they don't just have one function. They typically have a combination of synergistic benefit, which is why you can use one or two spices or herbs, and they can have such a far-reaching benefit on so many different systems of the body, and they're delicious. So that's a bonus.
That was actually one of my questions about the synergistic nature of them. And this is something I learned when I took Josh's course, that when you mix certain herbs together, the sum is better for you than the individual parts. And I just thought that was so interesting that these compounds can really play off of each other. And it just shows you how much nature has really evolved to be the perfect version of what we need. And it's just tapping back into the land or tapping back into this ancient wisdom is something that's very popular right now, ancient medicine. Everyone's kind of talking about that. But we knew so much in the past, it seems, that we've lost in the race to be better and stronger and have more technology. But some of these things that we're rediscovering or tapping into are so interesting to me that nature has really provided so much of it for us there.
Absolutely. And most often the remedy we need most is almost practically growing in our backyard. It's right around the corner.
Yeah, I find Indian cooking really fascinating because they're using a lot of the same herbs and spices for every recipe, but they use them in different combinations. And we've evolved to understand how food works in our body, sort of on a subconscious level, by the way we taste our food. One of the most common questions Megan and I get when we teach herbal medicine or even culinary nutrition is how much of a spice or herb is okay? Like how much turmeric can you put in? How much clove can you put in? When you start to learn these benefits, everyone always thinks more is better. And one of the guiding principles we give is to trust your taste buds, because your taste buds know where the medicine is. It knows where the nutrients are. When we combine these spices, as you mentioned, we have this synergistic effect, and our body sort of knows it in some way, because we know when we combine these, it elevates the food, it makes it taste amazing, and it takes us to other places, on a spiritual and physical level in terms of our experience of that flavor.
As well, that flavor itself limits how much we can actually have. You can't eat 2 tablespoons of ground turmeric. It would be unpalatable and probably pretty nauseating and might give you a bellyache. But so the taste itself and the way the food is usually has its own limits in place, which is why you also want to be more mindful when you start using these herbs in therapeutic concentrates, because then you are taking it out of its more natural whole state.
I'm going to talk about contraindications later, but for right now, let's talk about how herbal formulations are developed and how they're different or similar to drugs and pharmaceuticals, which, from my understanding, a lot of the backbone of some of the drugs and pharmaceuticals that we take have been kind of extrapolated from the isolated aspects of different herbs.
Absolutely. So aspirin is a great example. So it's a known painkiller. And is it aspirin? It's aspirin. It was derived originally from white willow bark. So white willow bark is an analgesic, a natural painkiller. And what you end up with aspirin is a extreme concentrate of that active component. So that's kind of one example how traditional medicine has been manipulated by humans to create these concentrates to have a more aggressive and instantaneous response in the body. And oftentimes that's what we've sort of been programmed to expect when we start taking remedies, is that we want this immediate result, feel better, decongestant works within 30 minutes of taking a pill. And we've sort of been programmed to expect that. And a lot of what we do with herbal medicine is looking at prevention, tonifying the body, strengthening the body, which is a more slow and steady preventative effect or benefit in the body, as opposed to that aggressive response. There are herbs that can be used in that way, but that's not what our focus is on.
So is it safe to say that using herbs daily over a longer period of time, is that kind of what you're getting at, that that's more effective in terms of supporting longer term health than an acute situation that might be fixed by herbs?
In some situations, yes. So if we look at the spectrum of herbs and their effects, there's a group of herbs where we might just want to use them acutely for an illness for a short period of time because they're quite strong in their effect. For example, echinacea is quite effective at increasing certain white blood cells that can deal with an acute infection, or golden seal also similarly can do that. It's a great antimicrobial. But there's another group of herbs which we call tonic herbs, and there's a discipline called tonic herbalism, where these herbs are not as strong. They just kind of have, as the name suggests, a tonifying effect. And when you consume them or expose your body to them over a period of time, they just help the strength of your body. They make you more resilient. A lot of people are familiar with adaptogens. Adaptogens are a perfect example of this. They help your body adapt to stress. you're not as tired, you're not as worn out, you can handle more stress, you recover quicker, and you can take these things for a much longer period of time, because it's almost like, an herb that you would use culinarily. Like you wouldn't, again, going back to the turmeric or cloves, you wouldn't say, oh, I've used those 3 days in a row, I need to take a break now. It's like you want to have that in your food, ongoing, because there's so many subtle benefits from those constituents in those spices that they're constantly supporting the health of the body.
Can we talk about the different ways, you've mentioned a few of them, teas and salves, and what are the internal and external ways that we can start to use these herbs? Like when you're looking at kind of end products, end stages of where these herbs end up, what are those different places?
The most basic, and I think what everyone is already consuming, maybe without even knowing it, is an herbal infusion. So if you make a peppermint tea, you're using peppermint as an herb in a subtle but a medicinal way, and it can be helpful for digestion. It could be helpful for nausea. So there's a few different benefits in that way. So infusions are taking sort of the leafy kind of herbs and infusing them in water. The next step would be a decoction, where you take spices that are a little bit harder, or seeds, things like milk thistle or shaga mushroom or reishi or even goji berries, and you have to boil those down for a period of time to be able to extract more of the active constituents from those herbs. We can then look at different types of concentrates. So tinctures, where you're taking these herbs and soaking them in an alcohol for a period of time to extract the active constituents in that way. And then you would be taking either a few drops or a dropper full in a higher concentration. Syrups are another way. Like you can make an elderberry syrup where you boil it down in water with a little bit of honey. We like to do it with honey that we add after. Some people do it with sugar, but we try and keep the sugar out of the mix. So you can do syrups. You can make lozenges with things like slippery elm and an essential oil. Those are a few different internal applications. And then we can look at external applications, like making balms or salves, like a vapor rub or a bath bomb that you soak in, or even making an herbal tea that you infuse your bath in and soak in that. We have transdermal absorption, meaning what we put on our skin transfers into our body. So anything we put on our skin has the potential to have a healing benefit to the body. I talked earlier about compresses. That's another external application, or massage oils. So if you're getting a massage and you use an oil, a non-rancid oil that is heat stable, but you've infused it with maybe St. John's wort or chamomile or lavender. So in addition to the massage, which has a benefit to the nervous system and the body, you can also be absorbing the benefits of those herbs through the skin.
So when we start to think about these different applications and different use cases, I have to imagine that some of them are more shelf stable. Some of them go rancid more quickly. When we're thinking about what we might already have in our cupboard and how we're using these things, are herbs good forever? Like what's kind of the rule of thumb here on how long we should be keeping some of these things around?
Well, for raw herbs and spices, as a general rule, the softer the herb is, the shorter shelf life it's going to have. So if we're looking at leaves and flowers like chamomile or peppermint, it's going to lose its flavor, lose the essential oils a lot quicker than something that's really hard like shaga, which is a mushroom that dries really hard, or reishi mushroom that could last a really long period of time. So that's the shelf, or even roots or barks can last a little bit longer as well. And then when we're talking about some herbal preparations, there's really great ways to increase that shelf life substantially. So tinctures are a great way to preserve herbs over the long term. Most people have like one of those small bottles from the airplane of alcohol that, is 40 or 50 years old and hasn't changed at all. So alcohol is an amazing preservative of these herbs. And when you make tinctures, it gives you the ability to take that herb, whether it's fresh and in season or dried, and preserve it for when you need it. You don't need to have it on hand.
And one other factor to consider when you're making things like oils or an infused honey, which is another great way to preserve herbs, is using them in their dried form. So as soon as you add water, which contains oxygen, so a constituted or fresh herb is going to have that water or oxygen in it, you increase the rate of oxidization or rancidity. So if you're working with dried herbs, they're going to last longer than if you're working with fresh herbs.
That's a really good way to think about that. So when we start to think too about herbs overall, I think people hear herbal medicine or herbs and they think, oh, it's safe, it's natural, I can't really go overboard. And we've talked about it a bit in terms of the strength of them, or when you're isolating certain compounds, that it can be possible to go overboard on these. But what are some contraindications that we should be looking out for before we just jump into creating our own herbal mixes?
Mostly when we're working with the culinary form of them, like herbs and spices in their food form, we don't have to worry too much about contraindications. It's really when we start to concentrate them in some of these prepared forms like tinctures and capsules and even teas in certain situations. So, a lot of people are on pharmaceuticals these days. There definitely has to be some cross-checking to see if that drug interacts with the herb or spice that they're trying to consume at a therapeutic level. So, for example, when people have issues with blood clots, or, maybe they've had a heart attack or have thick blood, sometimes they're put on blood thinners. And blood thinners, as a category of medications, have a very narrow therapeutic target, meaning that if you take too much of it, your blood thins too much and you can bleed out. If you don't take enough of it, the blood is too thick. So other foods, other herbs that can influence the effect of clotting in your body can really affect how that drug needs to be taken, the dosage. And that's an example of something that would need to be checked.
Yeah, and I know pregnancy too is a big one. I often was looking at different herbs when I was pregnant, and my midwife would say, well, there's not really a lot of evidence because ethically, obviously, it's hard to test different things on pregnant women. But she was like, a lot of these things we don't know. And so it's better to just put them on the back burner until after you've had the baby and then revisit them, in the postpartum days. So I thought that was a big one also that should probably be mentioned, just in terms of people who might be starting to think in a more holistic and natural way during pregnancy, that not all of these herbs might be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are herbs that are known and safe. Aviva Rum is a great reference to look into that, but things like nettle and oat straw, and then some herbs can actually be very beneficial in the third trimester, for example, like raspberry leaf tea, to start to sort of tonify the uterus. So there is some research on them, and you just want to be mindful about your own personal health always, everyone, no matter whether you're pregnant or not, or breastfeeding or not, or wherever you are in your health. It always comes down to the individual, because something that's healthy and beneficial for one may not be beneficial for all. But it's also, I always have a little giggle about this too, that people start worrying about lavender and different herbs while they're pregnant. And then you think about, people drinking those massive coffees when they're pregnant, or the liquids you have to drink for the gestational diabetes test. So, within reason, but always consult with your own health practitioner for sure.
The Microbiome Report is brought to you by Biome Super Greens, a super greens formula that combines 31 super greens with prebiotic digestive enzymes and Biome probiotics, giving you a supercharge in a single scoop. To check out Biome Super Greens, go to biomehealth.com. That's BIOHM health.com. So let's talk about some common herbs for common ailments. And, obviously this show is all about digestive health and the microbiome. So maybe we can start there in terms of if people are dealing with maybe more acute things like digestive distress, diarrhea, or constipation, or some of these ailments that are very uncomfortable, what kind of herbs can we start to think about?
Well, ginger is my go-to. I'm prone to digestive stuff. Like anything happens in my life, that's where I get hit first. So I keep ginger on hand. I keep ginger root for delicious teas where you can simmer about a quarter cup of ginger with 4 to 6 cups of water, and you get a really strong ginger tea that's good for nausea. It's good for indigestion, helps calm the nerves, keeps circulation going. And I'll take ginger as a capsule or in tincture form for motion sickness, nausea. So ginger is a really great go-to everyday herb to have on hand for those types of digestive symptoms.
I definitely second that on ginger. And the cool thing about herbs is that they have so many functions. So sometimes you can have one herb in your herbal medicine kit and use it for so many different things. So Megan just mentioned all these amazing uses of ginger for digestive related stuff and a few other related items. But I just took some ginger this morning because I pulled my neck a little bit.
You're becoming an old man.
Yeah, something like that. And it's an incredible anti-inflammatory. So I just really looked in the cupboards and took whatever I could find that I knew was an anti-inflammatory. And that's the cool thing about some of these herbs. But on the note of digestion, one of my favorite categories of herbs are what are called bitters. And bitters are herbs that, exactly what it sounds like, they taste bitter. When we taste bitter, we ramp up all of our digestive juices, our enzymes, our hydrochloric acid, and we increase what they call in Ayurvedic medicine the digestive fire. So you can combine a bunch of these herbs, or you can take them individually. And, evolutionarily speaking, when we taste bitter in nature, we think it's a poison. Well, our body thinks it's a poison. So it tries to deal with that poison as quick as possible by ramping up our digestive juices. Now, these bitters are obviously not poisonous, but they elicit that response, and they're really amazing at improving digestion for those people who have, GERD or indigestion. They feel like food kind of sits in the stomach. Maybe they have gas and bloating. Maybe they get constipation or diarrhea. It's just kind of an all-around tonifier of the digestive tract.
Yeah, bitters is pretty much the first place I go when someone tells me they're having digestive issues with any of my clients. It's all about eating hygiene and really slowing down to eat and getting into a parasympathetic state. And then adding bitters is just a really nice way that a lot of people see so much relief with. So that's a good one. And then in terms of the Ayurvedic side of things, we had Divya Alter on, who was my Ayurvedic cooking teacher when I was in New York. And she is also a big fan of ginger. And now anytime anyone in my family or any of my friends is getting sick, I do something very similar to what Megan was talking about with that tea, where I'll grate ginger, make a really concentrated tea, and then strain out the ginger, add a little bit of raw honey and a squeeze of lime. And I swear people have said that their sinus issues and sore throats and things have virtually disappeared. I actually had a friend who had COVID, and I made her some of this tea and took it to her, and she said it really worked wonders. So even on something as serious as COVID, we can use some of these things to really move the needle.
Second.
Yeah.
Herbal remedies can help with a virus?
Oh my
Stop
goodness.
it.
Can you
Shocking.
believe it?
The tea you just mentioned and what I was talking about, actually, I used to make that when I was pregnant because I didn't have one of those pregnancies where I was just feeling amazing and glowing all the time. I felt sick, like a walking barf bag. But I would make that tea into popsicles because I couldn't tolerate like drinking something hot. And so that's another way to get the herbs in too. If you make, herbal infusion and use that as the liquid in popsicles and smoothies, can be a really great way to sort of layer in more nutritional benefit.
That makes me think of something too, when we're starting to think about kids and how to introduce herbs into the lives of children. So, obviously doing something like a ginger popsicle sounds delicious, but do we need to be careful when we're giving kids herbs or different teas, or what does that picture look like?
No. I mean, do you want to talk about what we need to be careful of giving kids? So one of the first things when our son started drinking water, we would give him like a weak infusion of nettle tea or peppermint tea, these really safe, stable, neutral herbs. And it also helped sort of condition his palate as well. So we started off with that. And yeah, we add them in smoothies. We put them in popsicles as bases. You could even cook like an oatmeal in an infused water. So there's so many different ways to integrate it in, and just letting your children become accustomed to these different tastes. So making them legitimate iced teas where you're making a beautiful infusion and maybe there's some lemon balm in it and, different herbs you can grow in your garden, which makes it even more fun. So your child can clip herbs, make the tea, drop the ice cubes in, and that becomes a refreshing drink they can make for themselves from a pretty young age, is a really nice way to introduce that.
Really, just with the little ones, we have to remember they're just little adults, right? They have all the same body parts. They have all the same systems, all the same enzymes. So typically we just have to reduce the dosage based on their body weight and go a little bit slower with them. And the cool thing about working with kids, they're so responsive to all types of remedies, even the ones that are a little bit more mild for adults, like essential oils. If your kid is a little agitated, get some lavender in the diffuser or put a little lavender on their pillow before they go to sleep. And they tend to respond really well to things that may not even be internal. The other thing that we have to think about with kids mostly is the delivery system. So if we're trying to get the herb in them internally, we often have to be a little bit creative. You mentioned popsicles, which is a really great way. We always have an elderberry syrup on hand if we ever think our son is coming down with something. It's delicious, it's easy to get in, and it's a fantastic antiviral and antibacterial elderberry. We also have vitamin C, which is in a form called liposomal vitamin C, which is quite sweet because it's in like a glycerin liquid. So it makes it quite palatable there as well. And vitamin C, again, is an amazing immune booster and helps to fight off various illnesses.
And if you're making your child any kind of like Jell-O or homemade gummies, you can also use an infused water in those things. So anything you're making for them that has water in it, you can layer it up by adding some herbal infusion to it.
Those are such good tips. And I've said this to you both before, but I need you both to write a toddler cookbook where we're talking about some of these tips and giving some good recipes, because toddlers are tough, man. That's like a whole new ball game.
It is tough. And we have, our son now is a 3 3/4 in the full expression of the 3-year-old pose. And every day is a different experience and a different adventure. We find it so funny because we drink these herbal elixirs every morning, and I don't put any type of sweetener in it. And they're fairly bitter, and he will down it. Like, he loves it. And I'm like, okay, go for it.
My son is the same way. Yep.
Yeah, he also eats the mulch out of the juicer as we're juicing stuff. So,
well, my son's just eating the mulch outside. Like, that's where we're at. So, oh my gosh,
digestive system.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, my friend next door, actually, we were outside. It was a nice day. We're here in Cleveland, so we're dealing with the long winter. But we were outside, and I was just letting him play in the flower bed a little bit. And I turned away for a second and turned back, and he was just holding a piece of dog poop. And I was like, "Oh my God, no!" And my friend's like, "Aren't you the microbiome queen?" I was like, "We draw the line somewhere. Like, this is, the dog poop. I think I need to, we need to go wash his hands. That's not." So, not that anyone is doing much traveling now, but let's say that both of you were on an island somewhere and you could only take 2 herbs with you. I have an idea of what one of Megan's might be, but
well, if I have to get on a boat to get to that island,
yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's just say you're on an island for a year. What are the 2 herbs that you're each taking with you that you couldn't live without?
I think I would take ginger for sure, and I don't know. I think maybe like a reishi or a chaga for immune modulation, for nervous system health, and it sort of is, those are both those tonifying herbs. So I would take either one of those.
And I would have to, well, hopefully I'd be with Megan, so we'd have ginger and reishi covered. But I would also bring like an American ginseng. I love ginseng.
Ginseng.
It gives me energy. If I was on an island, I need a lot of energy to go find some food and build a shelter.
And to go hunt for ginseng.
Exactly, yeah.
No, you guys are getting it airlifted in. You don't have to worry about where the herbs are coming from.
So yeah, American ginseng is great. And I think the other one would be golden seal because it's so versatile. It's an incredible antimicrobial. And again, if I was on an island, the water might not be the best all the time. So it's a great antimicrobial there. You could use it as an eye wash. You can use it as an antimicrobial topical on your skin. Golden seal also have certain components in them that really help with blood sugar control. And if I can't have food all the time, I need good blood sugar control. So it's another one that is has so many amazing benefits.
That's perfect. Okay, so now on the island, you guys are getting it airdropped in. It's obviously of the highest quality. But when people are starting to think about how to source their herbs, what are some things that they need to be looking out for?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is to grow what you can. So even if you're in an apartment, find the sunniest window and start growing some cilantro, some basil, some mint, some lemon balm. Those are all really easy to grow, or whatever herb you love the most. So I would start with what you're able to grow in the space that you have, because that is the best on all levels. And the next thing we look for is how they are harvested. We always want to make sure that they're coming from clean and sustainable sources, and optimally sources that are close to where we live whenever possible.
Yeah. So, one of the best forms of herbs is what's called wild crafted. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just finding the herbs in nature. Now, as Megan said, you want to definitely make sure it's sustainable, because there are a list of herbs that are endangered, and you can get that from United Plant Savers. They publish that. So you want to be careful there. But a wild herb has the strength and ability to survive in the wild with all the stresses that are there. So even if an herb's organic, which is the next best thing, a wild version of it is going to have a lot more potency. We see this with, specifically like ginseng, like I was talking about before. A wild ginseng root can sometimes sell for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. In fact, there's ginseng dealers in the US that get ginseng roots from farmers, and they sell them to places like China, where they're a lot more revered and a lot more expensive there. And they rate each ginseng root, and the wild ones have a much higher rating. Next is, you can get organic herbs. They're not going to be as strong as the wild ones, but they're still a really great option. And in certain situations, they're the best option out there. But yeah, you want to make sure they're either organic or wild crafted. And ginseng, because it's actually a huge industry, and I'm not going to get into this in this discussion, but there's a lot of extremely low quality ginseng out there that you don't even want to touch.
I think there's a lot of low quality everything out there that you don't want to touch. And just like we don't want to eat food that's covered in chemicals, we don't want to eat herbs in any form or spices or anything we're using for, if optimal health is our goal, we have to keep the chemicals out. So ensuring that the herbs and spices you're using, the therapeutics you're using, are not from non-sprayed sources.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah. I think it's the same, when we think about supplements and just the supplements that you can get at a drugstore or at Costco or, some of these big box stores versus something that you're getting from a practitioner who is working with companies that have vetted these things and checked for heavy metals and make sure that, they're formulated in the way that they're intended to be. So it's just being a discerning consumer.
Yes.
So you guys put a course together, which I love that you really go into all of this, because I think when you're starting with this whole world of herbs, it can be really overwhelming to think like, okay, great. Like I know how to make a ginger tea, and like maybe I'll try that thing that Josh said with the golden seal, but it's a lot, right? People spend their whole lives learning how to be herbalists and learning how to make these things and create synergistic compounds and things like that. So talk a little bit about your course and what you've distilled down, for lack of a better pun, into this course.
Yeah, so we wanted to invite people to start using these herbs in everyday use. And like you said, you can spend a lifetime and learn just a fraction of what there is to know about herbal remedies and herbal medicine. So we don't claim to be that level of expert. However, we do know how to use, 15 to 40 herbs on a daily basis in really simple applications. And so with the course, what we wanted to do was to empower people to start using stuff today in a way, to learn in a way that is just really approachable and really practical. So we've broken the course up by, common ailments. So like sleep, anxiety, immune health, that kind of thing. And then looked at 4 to 5 herbs that are sort of super strong in each one of those categories. In some cases, the same herb might show up in multiple categories. So looking at these common ailments, a few herbs that are really powerful in supporting, resolving, preventing those ailments, and then simple ways to use them. So we teach, I think it's roughly, 10 internal applications, maybe 8 external applications. We go through between 30 and 40 herbs in the course, but at the end of it, it's all so practical and how you can start to make and apply it in safe ways into everyday cooking and eating and consuming. Like we make a cider vinegar infused shrub where we're taking herbs and berries and making this delicious fermented shrub that you can sip on like you would a cocktail or mix into other types of drinks. So we're looking at how we make this really, really practical and approachable. We deliver the course over, I think it's 7 modules, each one focusing on a different system of the body with recipes that go with each one. So not just how to make the application, but how to then use it in culinary uses, how to use it in, say, a salad dressing, so that it really becomes part of everyday eating and, most importantly, is an effortless addition to what you're already doing in the kitchen.
I think that this is really a good time too for people to start thinking about this as we start coming into spring and people planting gardens outside. You mentioned that being able to plant some of these things in your own backyard is a great way to start incorporating them on a daily basis. So this course is going to be open for rolling enrollment, you said, throughout the year. But you guys, will you have additional resources? Like if people have questions, is there anything else that they can, find you online or ask some questions through that way?
Absolutely. So the course is offered through our school, the Academy of Culinary Nutrition. The course is at culinarynutrition.com/herbal. And of course, you can email our team. There's loads of information about the course, a great preview video, a full outline, but you can always reach out to our team and they'll get back to you very quickly because they're awesome with any questions to make sure that it is the right next step for everyone's learning.
That's great. And I mean, I can wholeheartedly, I've taken both of your courses now, and I can just say you are both such excellent teachers. So being able to combine your knowledge together and on a topic that's so interesting and in depth as herbs, I think is so cool. So I hope everyone checks it out. I will certainly link to the course and everything we talked about today. And maybe if we could provide maybe one recipe on something like a shrub for people, they could check that out there. And it will be at biomehealth.com/pages/podcast. And I just thank you guys so much. Thank you for everything that you do. Also, I saw your initiative for vitamin D and COVID and getting the word out about, alternatives to bolstering our health that maybe aren't being talked about at all in mainstream medicine and mainstream media. So I just really appreciate everything you guys do, and the courses you've put together are so thoughtful. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you for allowing us to talk to your audience and for everything you're doing and getting this information out there.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
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 You've just listened to the Microbiome Report, powered by Biome Health. Biome Health is a leader in gut health, gut testing, probiotics, prebiotics that focus on not only the bacteria in our gut, but also the fungi. Again, show notes are at biomehealth.com/pages/podcast. And until next time, I'm Andrea Wien.